Thousands of confidential files vanished from Google's servers. But this wasn't the theft of a familiar product. It was the theft of a blueprint. The federal indictment against engineer Linwei Ding alleges that starting in 2022, he systematically siphoned the core plans for Google's AI infrastructure, the very engine that powers its global dominance. Court documents allege that Ding, while receiving a Google salary, was involved with a Chinese AI startup, using stolen trade secrets to build its foundation, an incident that underscores enterprise risks requiring mitigation and remediation by security teams. The files didn't contain a finished model. They held something exponentially more valuable. This case forces a new definition of intellectual property, shifting from the final product to the billion-dollar process that creates it. It reveals the invisible engine behind every Google AI model, and why stealing its design is the ultimate shortcut. That shortcut leads directly to the heart of Google's competitive advantage: its supercomputing infrastructure. Court documents indicate the materials at issue contained detailed architectural plans for systems, rather than finished AI models. This intellectual property encompasses the proprietary design of Google's Tensor Processing Units, or TPUs, the software that orchestrates tens of thousands of them at scale, and the high-speed networking fabric that allows them to function as a single, colossal brain for model training. This is not a collection of isolated hardware specifications. It comprises over 2,000 pages of trade secrets detailing Google's hardware infrastructure and software platforms for its AI supercomputing data centers, refined over years through immense capital investment. The stolen documents detailed TPU and GPU systems, orchestration software, and smart NIC networking technology used in Google's supercomputing data centers to train and serve large AI models. Replicating this complex, integrated ecosystem is a monumental challenge that separates established technology giants from aspiring startups. The stolen files, prosecutors allege, offered a way to bypass that entire expensive and time-consuming process. The strategic value of such an asset is nearly incalculable, making its protection a matter of existential corporate security. Access is therefore governed by a strict hierarchy of internal trust and technical controls. With sensitive trade secrets at stake, the question of access became pivotal. Defense attorneys argued the documents were available to over 160,000 Google employees and contractors, far from a restricted inner circle. The core enterprise risk, as documented in public records, centers on the potential for a trusted insider to leverage confidential infrastructure details for unauthorized purposes, necessitating robust internal security and monitoring protocols. In 2019, Linwei Ding walked through Google's doors as a software engineer, a standard hire for a company building the future. His badge didn't just unlock an office, it unlocked the blueprints. He was given access to the crown jewels, the proprietary architecture of Google's supercomputing data centers, the very bedrock of its AI empire. For nearly 3 years, the digital logs told a clean story: a trusted engineer accessing files, contributing to the sophisticated cluster management system that commands Google's AI hardware. The corporate security model is built on this exact professional trust. It's a calculated, necessary vulnerability. Then, in May 2022, the story in those logs began to change. According to the federal indictment, a methodical campaign started. Prosecutors allege Ding began copying hundreds of confidential files from Google's internal network to a personal cloud account. Over the course of a year, proprietary technical information was transferred, as documented in the federal indictment, creating a significant enterprise risk for the security teams to later remediate. This wasn't a smash and grab. It was a slow, deliberate drain. The very credentials that enabled his legitimate work became the alleged tools of its duplication. Court documents state that while drawing a Google salary, he held the role of chief technology officer for a nascent Chinese AI company, a position the filing indicates he did not disclose to his employer, breaching his confidentiality agreement. The fox wasn't just in the henhouse. It was drawing a salary to guard the door. This duality represented more than a conflict of interest. It was a catastrophic failure of the trust model. A trusted asset had become the breach. The legal challenge was no longer about building a higher wall around the castle. It was about discovering the architect was secretly selling the blueprints. How could such a volume of proprietary data migrate, without triggering the alarms? That question remains the haunting center of the case. The method of exfiltration was not a sophisticated hack. It was a patient, sustained abuse of trust. A digital heist carried out in plain sight, one authorized access at a time. According to the federal indictment, Linwei Ding started a sustained transfer of hundreds of confidential files into a personal cloud account. Each upload was a small, authorized act, but compounded, they became what prosecutors allege was the systematic theft of trade secrets. This slow drain allegedly continued while Ding performed his daily engineering duties, using the very system he was compromising. But the file transfers were only half the equation. Prosecutors allege that during this same period, Ding was secretly working with entities in China while still employed at Google. Court documents indicate he traveled there multiple times and presented himself as a founder of an AI venture. His pitch, per the indictment, was explicit: to leverage knowledge from Google's infrastructure to build competing AI technology. The duality was stark: the trusted architect by day in California, the competitive builder by night in Beijing. This wasn't merely a conflict of interest. It was the transformation of a corporate secret into a competitive weapon. Proprietary data was allegedly siphoned through personal accounts to fuel the creation of a rival AI venture overseas. The challenge for the state was no longer just about protecting data. It was about proving that this methodical, dual life turned stolen property into the foundation of a foreign rival. That elevation from corporate betrayal to federal crime would hinge on intent. Was this an act of personal ambition, or something more? The corporate dispute became a federal case the moment the U.S. government unsealed a criminal indictment in a California courtroom. 4 counts of trade secret theft. 4 arrows aimed directly at Linwei Ding. This was no longer a matter for Google's legal team and NDAs. The Department of Justice had stepped in, and the defense would later cast it as prosecutors, reframing a breach of trust as a breach of federal law. The numbers on the indictment carry a brutal clarity. Each of the 4 counts carries a maximum of 10 years in federal prison. Each count tacks on a potential fine of up to $250,000. Stack them together, and the calculus changes completely. This isn't a lawsuit seeking damages. This is the state saying, what was taken belongs to the nation's competitive future. Ding no longer faces a severance negotiation. He faces a cell. The prosecution's theory is built on a deliberate escalation. They argue the alleged theft wasn't impulsive. It was methodical. Thousands of confidential files downloaded over roughly a year. Confidential information about the hardware and software powering Google's most advanced AI data centers, copied while the architect still held the keys. The state must now prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, that each transfer carried criminal intent, that the files weren't incidental, that the dual life in Beijing wasn't coincidence. The jury delivered its verdict, guilty on all 4 counts. The government had sketched its narrative in sharp lines, and the jury demanded proof, not pattern alone. The proof, in their view, was overwhelming. Yet regardless of where this trial lands, the indictment itself has already redrawn the map. It raises a question Silicon Valley cannot ignore. When an engineer's access becomes a weapon, who bears the cost? And what does trade secret truly mean in an era where code is strategy? The indictment may be a single case, but its operational precedent is already being written across the industry. The global race for AI talent has created a Faustian bargain. To win the future, companies must entrust their most precious assets to a mobile, international workforce. The very model of open, collaborative innovation is now alleged to be its most dangerous vulnerability. The human element, the engineer with privileged access, has become the weakest link in a digital fortress. This is more than a corporate security problem, it is a strategic one. If the foundational blueprints for AI infrastructure can be exfiltrated through a personal cloud account, then the security protocols of the past are relics. A digital Maginot Line, circumvented not by force, but by a trusted credential. The incident exposes a brutal tension: the need for global talent versus the imperative to protect sovereign technological advantage. And so the distinction between corporate IP theft and state-level economic espionage begins to collapse. AI is no longer just a commercial product. It is a strategic asset, a pillar of national power. The question this case forces is therefore no longer about one engineer's actions or one company's loss. It is about where the new line must be drawn. When protecting a company's bottom line becomes inseparable from securing the national interest, who holds the pen? The verdict in court will address the past. This reckoning will define the future.